Hi, welcome back to another episode of the Prep Radio Podcast. Tom Blackman with Paul Scarborough. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Tom. How are you?
Wow. If you'd asked me a few weeks ago, it would have been a very different response, but we're going to come on to that.
Why, Tom? Please, pray tell.
No, I want to keep the suspense for anybody who doesn't know.
Do you have Botox injections in your forehead? I was just looking at mine because I have this frown thing that's been going on for years. And like yours is not moving at all, so that makes me believe that you have Botox in your forehead.
I think that's more a byproduct of you being a grumpy bastard for life than it is my happy, outgoing persona.
Anybody who knows you knows that's the pile of bollocks. So, question avoidance. Okay, that's fine. Anyway, how have you been recently?
Yes, it's been okay. So if anybody who listens to this doesn't know, any of our two listeners doesn't know, I was in hospital with heart complications at the beginning of June, second week of June, and we're going to talk about that in a bit and how I'm recovering from that. But unfortunately, Paul still holds the record in near-death experiences, but I am catching him up.
And in good spirits, not to be outdone, I nearly collapsed and went into hospital last week. So yeah, we are. We are dedicating this podcast to the NHS.
Yeah.
So apart from that, then, because we'll speak about that later, along with speaking about mine, and I think for me there's a lesson learned there. But apart from that, how's things going? What you been up to?
Yeah, so we had FitXpo the other week, which I was speaking at, which was a good experience. I did it last year, and it was nice to be invited back this year for another go. It was a lot better this year, I found. It had certainly the stage was better, because last year there wasn't even a stage or seats.
Wow.
And I had the tiniest little TV screen to play my slides on, so it didn't really work well. But anyway, it was good. Much better this year.
Yeah. I must say, last year I think it was, although they had speakers, I think it was more of an afterthought. And I spoke to Darren Nally, who organises FitX, along with Rich and Kieran and stuff like that. And I said to him last year, I said, that's pathetic, mate, to be fair, you know. And he went, yeah, I know, we got to do better. And subsequently, as you've just said, they did. It was right as you walk in, so it's just on the left hand side as you walk in, I think door A. I thought the location could have been better. However, you did get an entry, so people would come in and immediately, look to the left and see. You're right, there were seats there, so people could go and sit down and enjoy the speech, where last year it was more like a moving audience that was like, even the people that wanted to stay and listen, they were sort of moved on by the actual crowds that just moved past. I've told you my opinion of your speech, so I'll only say it once and once more. I actually thought it was really good. I thought...
Yeah, I'm recording this, so you can't take it back now.
I did think the content, and because it was muscle gain for over 40s. Yeah?
Yeah, so gains begin at 40, so it was like considerations for anybody who's over 40 trying to build muscle, yeah.
And I found it really interesting, essentially, and I'm not just saying this, but there's a lot of stuff in there that I obviously knew, because we talk loads and bounce things off each other, but there was a couple of things in there that it wasn't the fact that I didn't know, but I'd forgotten about, and I did find, because obviously you're 42, I'm 52.
You should be on the next tour.
Yeah, I'll be on the next one next year. No, I'll be one after how to make gains after 50 when you've nearly died.
Post office nutrition when you're collecting your pension.
Yeah. So I found it really good. I know the people that I spoke to who were there, and the people that I spoke to afterwards who were there, but I didn't know at the time, all really enjoyed it. There were some very interesting things which I thought people were surprised with, the krill oil and the increased MPS. I think a couple of people were like, oh, right, okay. In the pure fact that krill oil, what's that? You know. So I know me and you have taken krill oil for a very long time. In fact, I've just ordered some more from Cardiff Sports, which I find to be the best brand around for that. And also, I was speaking to someone later that morning, because obviously I went home that day and you stayed and enjoyed the expo, and they asked me questions about the bit that you mentioned about training, about, you know, you can't expect to carry on building a physique that you built in your 20s or whatever using the same heavy sort of compound wall training. Now I like I said, we coach very similar, and I preach that. That's the way I go. But can you just explain a little bit on that, about how you would change things?
Yeah, so sure. So the thing is that when I work with, because my client base now is mainly that age group, because it fits. Obviously, I'm 42, so my client age group is between 30 and 50 normally, and they are guys mostly, but I do work with women as well, obviously, and so when I talk to these people, normally they are people who have previously trained or have been training for a good many years. And when I ask them about their training protocol, a lot of the time it is stuff they have done for all their life, you know, and that's normal. You'd expect that, you know, this has worked for me my whole life. I know this training system works, so I'm going to use it. The problem is that there's always that little bit of reminiscence, if that's the right word, or nostalgia about, oh, this is how I used to train in my 20s, and then look at how I looked then, and here's a photo of how I looked then. You know, if I could just get back to that physique, you know, I'd be happy. And of course, you know, when I'm hearing all this from people, you know, it's on the face of it, it's quite logical. You know, I'd like to get back to how I looked before. You know, I'd like to, but obviously what they're saying is they want to turn back time, which is impossible. You know, it's without a DeLorean and some, you know, nuclear material, it's not going to happen. And that's the problem, is that people generally, and I know, like we talk about this as well, we reminisce about our younger years and about, you know, our training and the bodybuilding and everything else, and what a good time we had in that community and all that sort of stuff. So there is that bit of nostalgia and memory with it. And it's the same with people who are trying to regain that lost youth, so to speak. It's like, well, this is how I trained then, and I look that way. So if I train that way, I'm going to go back to say how that looked. Yeah. And when you think it through logically, actually, it's like, yeah, I know I can't turn back time, but they don't know any other way to do it. But the issue is, because they don't know any other way to do it, they stick with what they've got. And that's why they get injured, and that's why they can't get the body they want.
Do you think it's also, and this is what I thought your talk really brought out, that, yeah, you can't do that because of, you know, I to be fair, I can't train now like I did in my 40s, never mind 20. But a lot of people, like you said, just don't have the understanding of why. It's like, yeah, but why? You know, I can do bench press. I can do bench press now. So why can't I load it up with as heavy as I can lift and bench press and get the same results? And like, I mean,
logically, when you say it like that, you obviously know the answer, because it's age, isn't it? You know that. But yeah, I get what you're saying, that people like, you know, why can't I just do the same stuff I've always done? Because I know that worked before. And subsequently, the sort of the short answer is MPS and the ability to be anabolic in sort of a natural way. I found very interesting what you were saying about omega-3s and krill, about that increase in MPS, you know. And yeah, so that's from a study which was actually done, I think, on 60 to 65-year-olds. And what they did, they gave them, I can't remember the doses now, but I'm sure I can find the study if anybody wants me to find it for them. But no, you don't. You wouldn't read it anyway. There's no pictures in it.
Abstract.
Yeah, the abstract. Yeah, that's the highlights, isn't it? The trailer. But yeah, the study was, I think it was males 60 to 65, they did resistance training. Some of them had fish oils, some of them didn't. And the people who had fish oils showed a more pronounced response from the training. And because we all know, well, hopefully we all know, or if you didn't know, now you know, that as you get older, there's something called sarcopenia that sets in, which is muscle wastage. And this is why it's so important, even if you've never trained before at 50 and you want to get into training, whatever, you should do that. I think there was a question about that actually at the end. It's so important to keep some semblance of resistance training into as long as you can maintain it into your older years, because sarcopenia sets in, and then you lose muscle a lot faster than you do when you're younger.
I think,
and so the fish oils seem to offset that. I think it's a dose of 2 or 3 grams per day, but I think it was the amount of EPA in it which was the issue, not the fish oil value.
I was just about to say, can you quickly just explain? Now, again, I know it, you know it, there's a lot of people out there that know it, but Joe Blogs, who trains and goes to the gym and whenever, you'll go, fish oils, yeah, brilliant, I'll go Holland and Barrett or Tesco's. You know? And I'm not I am slating Holland and Barrett and Tesco's, to be fair, but I think one thing that's on a real up at the moment is with supplements is forms. You mentioned this actually when someone asked about a multivitamin, and you mentioned that in a multivitamin they'll probably give you the cheapest version of zinc.
That's quite common.
Yeah, and you know, the guy who asked was a bit confused when you said that, as in, yeah, but zinc, you know, but we both know different versions of zinc will absorb differently and give you different results. Now, with fish oils, and you spoke about on the day krill oil, but it's not the strength of the fish oil you should be looking for, it's the strength of the DHA and EPH, is that right?
So EPA is the sort of the magic thing in fish oils that makes magic things happen, and there's like you said, there's a couple of omega-3 acids, EPA being the most active one, and you have DHA as well. Now, people say, oh, if I want omega-3s, I'll just go and get some some flaxseed oil or something like that, if you are a vegetarian or vegan. The issue is that plant source, with the exception of sea algae, plant source EPA, let's get this right. No, there is a site in the body that converts that converts EPA, I think, and I've got to get this right because it's ages since I discussed it, so I don't want to get called out on the podcast. But it was a conversation I had with Dr. Lee Hamilton, and what it was is that in plant omega-3s, there's a competition for a receptor site, and because of that competition, plant source omega-3s do not do the correct conversion, which is necessary for the body. Now, I do apologize for not knowing the exact facts there. I have actually got them written down somewhere, but that is why marine source fish oils, such as marine source omega-3s, such as fish oils and EPA, are so much better. I think, let me get this right, and I might get corrected afterwards. I think with omega-3s in plants, it's the DHA can be converted to EPA. Unfortunately, there's something that happens at the receptor site that converts it, and it doesn't happen a lot. I think that's correct, but that's the general gist of the situation. Well, that's why marine source like fish oils are so much better for that.
Okay, so obviously the source is important from marine. I like you to krill oil, but what's a good balance of so we all see omega-3s or fish oils or whatever, 3,000 milligrams and 20,000 milligrams and all this sort of stuff, but we know that's not all EPA, and that's not all that split of those two that we've just mentioned. So is there a ratio that you should stick to, like 120 to 150 of this and 60 to 120, or is it just an overall amount? So poor sources will have lower amounts than good sources. So is there
again, I think you caught me out a little bit on the dosing here, but the EPA should be a certain amount, and again, when I had the conversation with Lee Hamilton, he did spell out the exact amounts you need, but you want a fish oil with a high EPA source. Now, again, I haven't got the figures to hand for that, but if you do want to get that whole conversation, which was from a podcast, then I had a chat with him afterwards about it. It's on the Guru Performance podcast. It's one of the really early ones, I think number 35 or something like that. And he talked to Dr. Lauren Bannock, and he's also been on the Sigma podcast discussing that. So yeah, that's the podcast you want to listen to, because he discusses it in real detail.
Well, this is the podcast you want to listen to, but
yeah, but like I said, I haven't got the information to hand, but you should be looking for a high strength EPA fish oil. And again, the reason that the plant ones aren't so good is because there's a competition for another omega fatty acid at the receptor site that converts DHA to EPA in the body, and generally plant omega-3s don't compete very well for that.
If anybody listening to it is really interested in that, drop me or Tom a message, and we'll get the proper things.
I'll put the links in there. What I'll do is when I load this onto the podcast, I'll put the links to the podcast on there, because it's those two podcasts are ones I come back to again and again, because the details always slip my mind. It's like 2 grams here and 300 grams there or whatever. So I think it's in the region of 200 grams of EPA, but I can't be sure because I haven't got the data in front of me.
So the takeaway is don't go on the amount of fish oils as in what's on the label. Look in the label and look at the EPA and DHA. And I do know EPA needs to be higher than DHA.
Yeah, so there needs to be like almost like a 2-to-1 ratio, but it should be high anyway. And I will get those exact figures after the podcast and post them on the podcast page.
So like I said, that was a very interesting part of the talk, as was with the training. And speaking of training, I read an article today from Brad Schonfield, where I think it's just come out, where they found about rest periods in between sets and what effect that has on muscle thickness. And he explained it really well. What I read today. I've read the original study that he did quite a while back, because he was part of an original study where they found that they made the assumption that 60 to 90 seconds rest between sets was optimal sort of thing. And that was based on the release of IGF-1 and growth and things like that after a set. What they've now found is the optimal amount is around about 3 minutes.
Yeah, I've read another study that did that. They did rest periods and then measured things like the NPS response and stuff. And I think they come out and saying, like, if you were going to be really optimal, it's like 5 minutes between sets, so you allow for full rest and for the creatine phosphate cycle to refill and all that sort of stuff. But it's that optimal versus achievable.
Yeah.
Real world application. Who's going to wait 5 minutes in between a sets of bicep curls?
And
your workout would be 3 hours long, wouldn't it?
In one of the questions afterwards, they asked about why did he think that was, and blah blah blah. And he said, really, we came down to the conclusion that essentially it's because you can lift more in that next set if you rest enough to recover.
So there's a couple of things, isn't it? There's clearance of lactic acid from the muscle. There's regeneration of creatine phosphate. There's all this, calcium regeneration, all this stuff that, give you a full rest, to give you a really rested go at the set again. But again, it's like
you would be more recovered to lift that load that you started with again. So we all know at the end of the day, it doesn't. again, you mentioned this, strength doesn't correlate to muscle gain, and muscle gain doesn't correlate to strength. It's a byproduct of the way you train, but you don't have to be massively strong to be massive, and you don't have to be
massive to be strong.
And what they showed is that you can actually counter that rest period by doing 90 seconds, but then doing extra sets. So essentially, it's about load and what you can achieve in that given period. But I did find it interesting because I used to plan 60 to 90 seconds rest in my training schedules that I used to produce, and now I schedule between 2 and 2.5 minutes, and the reason why I don't go further than that is because they won't do it. They will not wait, 2, 3.
Clients, you mean?
Yeah, clients. Sorry, clients just won't do that. They'll be like, "Oh yeah, I'm sure it's 2 minutes," and look at watch, it was like 20 seconds, and they're eager to get back on. But yeah, I just found that interesting. We was talking about training and stuff. So the speech went well. That was really good. The talk went well, and the stage was really good. Like you said, it was far better than it was last year. Literally because there was a stage.
Yeah, and, exactly. Yeah.
And so how did you find the rest of the expo? Because I left that day, didn't I? I left on Sunday. I was there on Saturday.
Yeah, we walked around for, this is me and Sam, we walked around for a couple of hours actually. Went on, we watched the powerlifting for a little while, and I'm not really that into powerlifting. I know I have powerlifters at my gym, and a couple of my staff are powerlifters, and it's obviously a great thing to do, is to lift loads of weight, but I was never really into watching it. I never really found it interesting. However, when I walked past the powerlifting, it was I think it was made by the guy who was the announcer there. He was very good at getting the crowd up, in terms of, here's this next guy and we're going to try and do this and get behind him and everything else. It was really good. We watched it for about half hour and saw some decent lifts and stuff. So, that was nice to watch. One thing I was very happy of, there wasn't all those sort of really weird stuff that you saw at Body Power in the last couple of years. In Body Power, right at the end, there was like fashion shows and just randomly rubbish stuff there.
Yeah.
It's like, who's coming to see that? But anyway, so it certainly didn't interest me. But there was none of that sort of stuff. It was all, this is about lifting, and this is about bodybuilding, and this is about building the best body you can have. It was all about that, and obviously that's my thing, so I'm really into that. So I found it really interesting. So yeah, it was. I found it good. It was just big enough to walk around and not get lost.
Yeah, I found the original FitX last year. Okay, there was a few things that I'd mentioned. I mentioned about the stage to Darren afterwards, and a couple of things. I know a few other people mentioned stuff, and true to their word, Darren and Richard and Kieran and stuff like that, acted on all that, which is really good. I must say, I wouldn't like to see it much bigger. I think it was a real comfortable size. The problem with that is obviously it was a success, and I think more and more people will want to display it and things. But I hope they keep it to a reasonable size, because essentially that's what went wrong with Body Power. You just try to expand and expand and expand.
I think the thing there is that the Liverpool Centre is of a certain size, whereas the NEC, you can have as many halls as you want, can't you?
Yeah.
So you could expand into 5 or 6 halls, but I think what I would hope doesn't happen is that because what was nice to see was a lot of the smaller fitness businesses, go in there and the stuff I would never have heard about before. There's a guy making cookies, protein cookies, which are absolutely awesome. I mean, they're a £5 a cookie, but they were awesome. Stuff like that is you wouldn't see that at, say, Body Power, because that guy hasn't got 10 grand for a 5 meter square stall, or 2 meter square stall or whatever. And that sort of stuff, that sort of quirky little side businesses or little sort of micro businesses, they were there, which was really nice to see.
there was some cookies. I got them. I spent a fair amount of time at the Eval store with Dave Crossland and Shajnay, and he had some cookies that were in plastic, and they were probably about that size, and I think they were like cherry bakewell flavor.
Yeah.
They certainly weren't £5. You wouldn't pay £5 for something this big.
I mean, maybe I exaggerated the price. They were pricey.
But I know that there was a couple of places, so this might not be the place. And for the life in me, I couldn't find the stall. And Dave was like, "Oh, have one." There was a couple on this thing, and I had it, and it was like, "Oh my god!" I really like cherry bakewell flavor stuff, and I was like, "Wow!" And it was sort of like, "Yeah, I'm not going to be, I'm not going to eat them all," sort of thing. Yeah. And I thought I'll find the store, and I never found it, which is really gutting. I found it really good, same as you. You could walk around; it wasn't overly packed. It was nicely busy. I essentially went up, obviously, to see your talk, and to see people I hadn't seen for a year. I'm not judging anymore,
like me.
Yeah, like you. Yeah. We speak twice a day, every day, but I got to see a lot of people. Aaron Hudson, got to spend a lot of time with him and his wife Kate. Rich from Strom, and Darren and Dave Crossland, and lots of people. And I had a really good time chatting with a lot of people. I was fortunate enough. This guy, Nathan Stiles, he's sponsored by Dave Crossland and the thing. He judges for FitX, and I met him for the first time last year, and he was a little bit of a fanboy, and I was like, wow, okay, you're like 310 pounds, that's slightly humbling. And he'd watched prep, and and followed me on the forums and stuff like that. And it was really weird. I had a lot of highlights, but one of the highlights for the weekend is we went for a coffee. We were in the FitX, and he said, "Oh, I'm going to go for a coffee. Do you want one?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll walk over with you." And we walked over to the docks, to the Costa, and just got a coffee, and then just came back, and we were just chatting about bodybuilding in general. Not really having an opinion on stuff, just generally chatting
about like you not to have an opinion on bodybuilding.
Well,
you didn't have one moan.
We wasn't trying to right the world. It was just a nice chat. And Nathan's a great guy. I think he's got a load of potential in the sport. I really do. His dedication is second to none. And along with his partner Phoebe, who again is great in the sport, they are really good, genuine people. And the highlight for me was just to spend some time with a guy that was asking me basic, questions that he wanted to know about, and what about this and what about that, and it was just a nice chat. Do you see what I mean? It was just, it was just nice. And I did message him afterwards and thank him for the coffee, and just for the chat. It was really good. I really weird how things become.
I'll tell you what, it was windy that day because we walked over to the docks as well, me and Sam, and God, it was cold. It was. I thought, God, this is supposed to be like summer. This is summer in Liverpool. It's like the north in the Game of Thrones. It was so cold. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was a good atmosphere. It was the atmosphere that the old bodybuilding community atmosphere. I quite like that, and I hope that doesn't get spoiled in the future.
I do as well, mate, because like you, we've moved a bit away from bodybuilding. I was very humbled to be approached by quite a few people who knew me from UK Muscle and helping them. I had one guy. I think it's weird. I said to Rich, we were in the hotel on Sunday morning just chatting, and he waved bye to someone, and I was like, who is that guy? I've seen him around. Saw him around the expo. I saw him the year before, and I just was like, who is he? And the guy went out and then came back in, and Rich shouted him over, and he's like, Paul, this is Ricky. Ricky, this is Paul, and he's the guy who owns Chemical Warfare. yeah, and the company. And I was like, oh, hi. I just asked him, and he went, oh, you helped me loads when I was in UK Muscle and blah, blah, blah. And it was just really nice to meet people like that, if you see what I mean. And just get to talk about, basic stuff without arguing, without, it was just a genuine, thing. And I think if the guys managed to keep it like that, I think it would be great. It was good to see the likes of Matt Tofton, who has the biggest set of arms I've seen in a very long time.
I know, that's why I didn't go anywhere near him. Like, I don't want to have another Luke Sandow experience where I got totally outgunned in a photo.
Yeah, well, I'm like sepsis, kidney, no comparison.
I did see him actually, but when I was walking past him, I think I was on my way to the toilet and I was absolutely bursting. I thought I must come back and say hello.
The man with the most perfect, the man with the most perfect beard and biggest arms. It was, and Matt's such a nice person, so it was great to see him. Like I said, it was good to see Dave Crossland. We had a real chat with me and Dave, and it was really weird because we both laughed about the fact that when we were on the forums, we were at each other's throats.
That's like everybody isn't it?
Well, yeah, pretty much.
Did you run into anybody you banned from the forum?
No, I didn't. Or if I did, they never told me that. But I guess that for me is what I'm like after everything that's happened. It was just nice. It really was nice, and it was one of the reasons why I wanted to go. I didn't. Well, we went out for food, didn't we, on Saturday night with Dave and his crew and Aaron and stuff like that. But I didn't go out on the Friday night. I just basically stayed downstairs in the hotel bar area and just chatted with people.
Yeah.
And I just think it was a success. But long may FitX, keep on going. I believe PCA is doing an expo at some point this year.
I don't know. I said I don't know anything about because I don't really, like you said, I'm not really in the loop with bodybuilding competition anymore.
So so there's something I've got to add is and some people may not like this when I add it.
Sounds like a rant that's about to explode.
Yeah, and some people may agree with me. I met a lot of people at the expo that certainly does agree with me. What's happened to NABBA?
This is about the British finals moving to somewhere else, isn't it?
It's about NABBA, to be fair. They're still, for some reason, and I don't understand it, they're still refusing to get into the social media world.
Isn't it all, for one, this is going to sound bad because we're older guys, but it's guys that are older than us.
NABBA has a council, and it's the most guarded thing ever, as if it means anything. And seriously, man, I'm not. Do you know what? I'm not even joking. It's full of fossils that have no understanding. There is the odd younger guy, Joe Walker's just joined it, Paul from Wales and stuff like that. But essentially, it's full of fossils that have got no understanding of what drives people to shows nowadays. They're living in a backward world, and it's ridiculous. I only knew that West Britain was on because I had a guy competing in it. There was nothing there. I only knew the Britain was on because I had a guy competing in it. And the level of athletes out of Britain, not to take anything away from anybody who stood on that stage, but anybody who's anybody in bodybuilding would look at that Britain and say it was down on previous years.
I think the issue here is that years ago, obviously when we were competing, social media wasn't that big then. I remember that when me and you were competing, Facebook was okay. It's going to sound awful because it is what.
Facebook came around about 2007. So even when Facebook was around, it was.
No, it's actually. I think it's actually earlier than that because I think I joined in 2005.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, it's I think the thing is that they haven't moved on.
No.
And I remember when PCA came along, and this was like I think 10 years ago when PCA came along, and like UKBFF and NAB were like, oh, look at these upstarts, you know, and blah 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 blah. But Ryan and his team did a really good job of promoting it on social media, giving back to the athletes, basically all the stuff that UKBFF wasn't doing, and then obviously UKBFF lost the pro card, which was the only reason people competed in UKBFF because everyone hated the people at the top anyway, and UKBFF lost all their competitors.
And at the time, it was between those two. The top two federations were NABA and the UKBFF.
Yeah, you were either one or the other, weren't you? I'm a NABA guy, I'm a UKBFF guy.
Yeah. And the guys who came out at the top and stuff like that were amazing guys and whatever. And I dare to say, but especially when it comes to NABA, they're right at the bottom now. And I've got, you know, most people know I've got no love for NABA now, you know, for various reasons, but I've got no love for them. And do you know what? I think it serves them right. It's not a case of, do you know what? They were really unlucky with this and whatever. You know, they got told 12 years ago they should appoint someone to manage social media, manage the forums and promote it and stuff. When I was involved with them before my health stuff, I used to get the posters from head office and digitize them and put them on the forums. And I did that off my own back. You know, I requested them, whatever, and that's all they did. They've got zero presence on Instagram and Facebook and any other platform worth mentioning. And I think a couple of years ago, they got like an account and then done a few pictures and then nothing. And I just think the reason for the rant is I just really think that it's a shame that something that was so great and I loved is now something that's so.
Yeah, but then again, it is a shame when you reminisce on it. We're talking about, you know, we were talking about reminiscing earlier. It is a shame, but actually time has taught us. I'm going to sound like some fucking Google quote now, but if you look at the way things progress, you know, when me and you were kids, if you wanted to get a movie on a Saturday night, you got in the car and you went to Blockbuster, you know, and looked around all the things. Now you just open up Netflix. And people who've moved with the times have actually triumphed, and NABA hasn't moved with the times. UKBF hasn't moved with the times. PCA knew what it was, knew what needed to be done, and they did it, and they've succeeded. They've become incredibly popular, and they're a good federation, which is even better.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So, just to wrap up, because we're coming to the end of this little segment program, I wanted to just give a little bit of details on your illness, on your little perfect storm sort of thing, and mine, and finish off that. Obviously, we're not going to preach about health and stuff like that, but there will be people after this that's gone, but you didn't tell us what was wrong. What's happening? What happened? You know, whatever. So if you just fill people in with a short side of what happened, and then I'll do the same.
Yeah. Okay. So and the reason I thought it was better to do something where I talk about it is because when I was ill, I obviously didn't go to work. I wasn't really posting on social media, although I had stuff I'd already pre-planned to post on social media. So I had my scheduled stuff, which actually went out anyway, regardless of what I was doing. And incidentally, one of the ones that went out, which was pre-programmed, was putting your health first, which I thought was ironic. God, imagine if I died. That would have been ironic, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You could have said, "Oh, look at that, Tom." When
you wouldn't have guessed the amount of stuff I would have said on this podcast.
Exactly. So anyway, I thought I'd talk about it because obviously I wasn't visible at the gym, and a few people who knew Sam, because Sam didn't say, you know, is in hospital, whatever, but some of the pictures on social media, and then she's talking about, you know, me being ill and stuff like that. So people, what's happened with Tom? And then obviously stuff trickled down because certain people had to know what was wrong with me, and then they found out I was on the cardiac ward, and it was, Tom's had a massive, you know, 3 bypass or whatever. And because I wasn't really posting and talking about social media or whatever else, there's like, people it was fueling the fire and everything else. And obviously, because I'm, one of the owners of the gym, people were talking there about what was going to happen to the gym and all, potentially staff were worried about what was going to happen.
Plus you're Insta famous.
Yeah. So there's all that stuff. And I thought, do you know what? I should really do something about it just to quell all that sort of stuff. So, but I didn't want to say anything until I'd had all my scans and I'd had all the stuff, because I didn't know what happened. The doctor said, "Oh, we think it's this, we think it's this, we think it's this," but they weren't sure, so they had to do all these scans. So I had an angiogram, and if you never had an angiogram, I would highly recommend having one, because it is possibly the most pleasant experience you can have. Having a massive tube rammed up your arm into your heart, it's great, so that I had that, and I had an MRI with some dye going around my heart so they could see what was going on there, and I also had an echocardiogram, and that was a unique experience because of my size. The girl had to sort of climb on top of me with a thing to get the angle right, and it was just like, if someone walks in at this exact moment, they're going to think something's happening, so that was interesting. But she's a very nice lady. And so what did happen was, it was sort of like four things combined. On their own, they weren't anything to be worried about, but when they combined all together at this point in time, that's when the issue was. So I've had COVID 3 times, and each time I felt like a bit more fatigued and stuff like that. And recently I had a cold, which wasn't COVID, but that cold got onto my heart. And this is actually quite a common thing that happens to very many people. And normally you just weather it and you go, "Oh, I feel tired and everything else." So this thing got on my heart, and unbeknownst to me, it inflamed my heart because obviously the virus was there. And I felt okay. I was still training, but I didn't realize this was happening. So that happened. Then I have angina because it's hereditary. My dad has it. And my dad years and years ago had about 3 stents put in because he has angina. So, and he had to change his diet and everything else as a result of that. Now, because angina is hereditary, and I found about this, it was just before we filmed prep, actually. So it's about 10-ish years ago. So that's part of the reason why I decided to stop bodybuilding competition, because of the health implications of using anabolics and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, well, I've done this for say 10 years. I've done reasonably well. I'm going to do prep the series, and then I'm probably going to retire after that, because I'm not really want to risk things anymore, So we did prep the series, and then I stopped, I retired, everything else. My gear use went down to TRT levels, absolute minimum. And I've been fine for 10 years, but angina is in my family. So that's an issue as well. And it means the arteries don't expand as much as let's say other people's would. They're not as elastic. So a blockage or high blood pressure can be more of an issue. Then I have thick blood, which is partly due to things I did when I was bodybuilding. And now obviously I've got medication to sort of counteract that, and it should settle down, by itself. And then the other thing was my heart, actually, when they did the angiogram, they said it was as healthy as they'd expect any 42-year-old's heart to be. Wasn't really any blockages or anything else, apart from a very minor blockage on one of the very minor arteries on the front of the heart. Now, the issue being, because the heart was inflamed from the cold and the virus, because my angina had made the elasticity of the arteries less anyway, and because of this thicker blood and because of this small blockage, all that meant that the blood couldn't get through that minor artery as well as it should have. And because of all this, that's why I had an issue where I had a lot of pain in my heart. Now, I didn't have the classic signs of a heart attack. I didn't faint. I wasn't cold. I wasn't sweating, anything else. Just like if I was going to analogize it, it was like an elephant sitting on my chest. That's what it was like. I was able to walk. I was able to talk, but albeit very...
will the side of your face come back though in time?
You prick. But actually, there was no issue with I didn't have a stroke or anything like that. Thank you very much. So anyway,
What
because
about
of
the
all
hair
this,
loss?
that was there before. That was
Oh,
just,
right,
yeah,
okay.
that's just another thing that I had to contend with,
Oh.
But all this stuff basically meant that I had this issue. And the thing is, I trained all that week really hard. I'd done legs the day before, and like I went home. I thought, well, that was a tough leg session, but it was hot and everything else. I thought that's just hot. Got up in the morning, trained arms. I was like, oh, I think that's shouldn't be out of breath from a set of bicep curls. And because of obviously, I'm very conscious about things with my heart and anything to do with that sort of thing. I didn't have pain then. I didn't have anything. I felt as if things weren't right. So I went to the doctor, and he said, oh, I think you should go to A&E because I can't really do the tests here, like an angiogram. I can't do the tests here that I need to ascertain if anything's actually wrong, or if it's just a bit of like virus or whatever. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll go later on. So I did my client meetings. I did my so I didn't feel ill. I thought I'll go there when I've done all my meetings. So I did the accountability call for the build program I'm running. Did my client meetings, and then I toddled off, drove over to Southmead Hospital, and if you're in Bristol, you know that Southmead Hospital, the car park, the patient car park, is a good 3-mile walk. It's internal, but it's a 3-mile walk down this long stretch in the hospital. So that walk was actually the thing that triggered everything off.
Oh,
And
well.
yeah, but I don't know why, because I was walking at a reasonable pace and everything else. And the doctors were like, this is such an interesting case because none of this really should have been an issue and it shouldn't really cause this. So we're just interested in why. I'm like, okay, am I going to die or not? I'd like to know, please. And they said, no, there's nothing like that. It's just, and they said, well, actually, we think that medication will correct this, So you've got to be mindful. Obviously, you've got this minor blockage, so you've got to be mindful of that. But they couldn't do a stent because where it was, if they'd done the stent, because it's right on the join of the artery, if they put a stent in, that could have potentially impacted the major artery, which would have then there's like a 1 in 10 chance of a major heart attack. So that I wasn't really down with that. So I thought, no, let's just try it with meds. So that's what we did. And I was in for a week, being monitored and everything else. But, I've come out and people, a funny thing, people have gone, oh, how are you going to change your lifestyle? I was like, well, not really, because I don't drink. Like I have like a beer once a week or something. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't do recreational drugs, even though they asked me like 8 times, do you do cocaine? I was like, no, I don't do cocaine. And they come back a couple of hours later. Now, do you do cocaine? No, I'm pretty sure I don't do cocaine.
I think it might have been all that white powder around your nose every time they
it's just creatine. It's just creatine. I took it in with me. But they asked me 8 times. Wow. I said, at the end of it, I said, I'm not being funny. Why you keep asking if I do cocaine? And they're like, well, it's just that we see a lot of this with recreational people who do cocaine and it sets a heart off. I said, okay, well, I don't. The strongest thing I take, like stimulant wise, is a pre-workout. And it's an off-the-shelf pre-workout. It's not anything that's it's not Ultimate Orange or Ephedrine or anything like that. And yes, people say, "Oh, what are we going to do?" I said, "Well, I don't. I'm healthy. I walk, I train, I eat healthily. I take supplements to help me with my heart and with my general health. I'm and the doctor said, you're a healthy guy. This shouldn't have happened, but it has. So you've now got to be wary of the fact that this is there, and you've got to obviously take medication to help that. So that's it. So I've got to take some medication, probably most of it for the rest of my life. But if it stops me dying sooner, I'm okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much my philosophy on medication. Essentially, my stay was a couple of nights, 3 days, and it was something that built up over 6 to 8 weeks with a negative side effect of taking so many antibiotics because I've had so many chest infections. But excuse me. Apparently, at the end of it, I should have called myself. I should have backed off. I didn't. And it's only now actually people are going, actually, when I saw you at FitX, you were a little bit pale and you were a little bit grey and you were a little. And I was like, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me then?
I told you. I said you don't look very well. You should go and sit down.
Yeah, well, I got home on the Sunday night and I wasn't well. Monday I wasn't, and then Tuesday morning I was curled up on the sofa, and I don't phone the hospital often, and I phoned them, and I think they were like, right, the fact that you phoned us, Paul, because obviously I phoned my transplant team, the fact that you phoned us and your history, let's get you up here. And the long and the short of it was, I ended up being on a fluid drip for 16 hours, and there was the antibiotics had messed up with my my stomach and my my gastro sort of area. So they've given me some omeprazole to help with that, and like I said, loads of fluid. And I had an endoscopy.
Is that your bum? You like that?
No. It was down the throat, this one.
Oh, unlucky.
Mate, I tell you what, I can still feel it in my stomach. It's just, oh my God. and they're like, oh, just breathe. Just breathe. I was thinking, let me stick this fucking camera down your throat.
Just breathe with this massive tube down your throat. Okay.
Yeah, I know. It was just ridiculous. For anybody who's going to have one, they offer you either a throat spray or a sedative. I had a throat spray because I thought, I'm going to have the sedative, and then they're going to tell me down on the ward I can't go home tonight because of the sedative. Next time I'll just fucking have the sedative. I tell you, it was just ridiculous.
Or you have the sedative and then you wake up and you got like a massive tube coming at you like somewhere. Yeah. I was like, oh, we had to do this while you were asleep. I was like,
yeah, I tell you what, mate, it was fucking horrific. And I've had some horrific things done, when I was ill and stuff, and this was unbelievable. And the long and the short of it is they found no obstruction, they found no ulcers or anything like that, which is obviously the worst case scenario. But they did find that even after 11 hours of not eating, I still had food in my stomach. And apparently that's quite unheard of. So they are gonna give me a CT scan at a later date to see if there's a problem with just my digestion. But essentially, I ran myself to the ground. I didn't really look after myself, and I kept going. And the end thing was that I was just, that's it. They weren't impressed that they had to put 16 hours of fluids into me. Now, 16 hours of fluids into someone who's got 2 working kidneys is still bad enough. To put that amount of fluid into a guy that's got 3/4 of a transplant kidney is pushing. Like you said I didn't feel well. I've spoken to several people since, and like, yeah, you look really grey and this and this and that. And so I need to, when things happen like that, I just need to, I drove for like 16 hours that weekend, and
that as well. The driving, I found the driving, because I think for me it was 5 hours up there, 5 hours back.
Yeah,
and I mean that was tough. So yeah.
Yeah. So, but I put it down to more of an experience where I should have known better. And I think for me, it made me realize just how susceptible I am, because before I hadn't really had an infection or anything. Even 4.5 years I've had my transplant, and I never really had an infection. So the immune suppressant side of my transplant has never really raised its head. And this sort of was like, right, you've got no immune system. Here, I'm going to do this to you this weekend just to make you know, don't be a twat.
Just to let you know.
Yeah, but that's it. So I'm all good, like you are now. So that's really good. So we're going to wrap it up now.
Yeah, because obviously it's been obviously about, it's over 6 weeks, isn't it? Because I was ill, then you were ill. So yeah, it's been over 6 weeks. So we're going to get back onto our 2-week rotation now.
Well, and just to let people know, we got a couple of guests lined up.
We've got one guest. Don't overhype it.
Actually, we've got a couple. So
really?
So be quiet. So we got a couple of guests lined up that I've spoken to today. So hopefully we can get all that sorted. So the next podcast we'll have a guest, and then we'll go from there. But I've enjoyed this. It was a nice short one to jump in that after, like you said, 6 weeks, 8 weeks,
Yeah.
something like that. Right. Okay. Well, until next time then.
Yes. So next time in about 2 weeks, and
Yeah.
and we should hopefully have a guest, which will make the podcast more interesting. So if you're still listening by then, hopefully you'll like to tune in for that. Paul, have you got anything to say before we go?
Not really. Everybody can reach me on normal social media, Team Peace Garb, that sort of thing. But yeah, by the time we come back, I'll have relaunched my website, so we'll have some goodies on there and things. But that's about it.
Cool, exciting news. Okay, let's call it a day there, and I will speak to you next time. Thank you for listening or watching if you're on the YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.